Hello, everyone. Welcome to Webinar Wednesday. I'm June Raw, the director for IPDAY, and I'm really happy that all of you are here with us today. Today's webinar, Student Success Strategy, Designing Lessons for IET, is part of a three-part series. Today is series number 1. Today's webinar is focused on taking your single set of learning objectives for IET and now developing engaging IET lesson plans from that. Vanessa Nicholson will be facilitating our webinar today, and we're happy to have her. Before we get started, I do want to remind you of a few housekeeping reminders. Your microphones are muted, so you are in listen-only mode, but please put your questions in the Q&A option. We'll be monitoring them throughout the webinar, and Vanessa will take all the questions at the end and answer them for you. Like all IPDAY presentations, the webinar today is recorded, and it will be available on the IPDAY website within 48 hours. So Vanessa, thanks for facilitating this webinar for us. So let's just begin and get started.
Thank you, June, for that wonderful introduction. So before we get started, let's take a look at our agenda for today's webinar. We will first take a quick review of what IET is, then what the lesson plan template looks like. Then we will go into how to create and find those contextualized activities, resources that can go with those activities, and assessments to complete your lesson plan. So let's just do a quick review of what is IET. Integrated Education and Training is a service approach that provides adult education and literacy activities concurrently and contextually with workforce preparation activities and workforce training for a specific occupational cluster for the purpose of educational and career advancement. IET also combines the occupational skills training and basic or academic skills instruction to increase the educational and career advancement of the participants. Adults lack the skills needed to work and grow in their careers. Many of the jobs require post-secondary training. The past decade has revealed economic challenges and the need for a well-educated workforce and development of human capital. This is why we have IET. Within the overall scope of our particular integrated education and training program, the adult education and literacy activities, workforce preparation activities, all three of them need to occur simultaneously. So for an IET program to be true, you will need to combine the adult education, workforce training, and workforce preparation activities. You need to use occupationally relevant instructional materials. You need to have a single set of learning objectives, which you should already have created, that identifies specific adult education content, workforce preparation activities, and workforce training competencies and the program activities. An integrated education and training program blends a range of education and training services to build learners' foundational, employability, and occupational skills. Through IET programs, adults seek goal-oriented, relevant, practical knowledge. Students with family and work responsibilities can offset the opportunity cost of education when IET truly leads to educational and economic mobility. So, to create your single set of learning objectives, all three components are fused together. So as you can see from our workforce training content and objectives, basic skills content and objectives, and the workforce preparation prep, you can create your single set of learning objectives. And you can see that at the bottom, we have 2. Identify proper sources of supply by reading food labels and evaluate food products based on cost and nutritional value in preparation for a catering event, and prepare dessert for a larger serving size than indicated in the recipe. We created that by combining those workforce training content and objectives, the basic skills content and objectives, and then the workforce preparation activities. So we did our single set of learning objectives, and SSLO is my short abbreviation for single set of learning objectives instead of typing it, 'cause it's just so long, but we've done them. So how do we move forward with developing our lessons? And this is at a time and place, I was stuck with that. Like I did the program of study with the team, developed all those learning objectives, and I was thinking, okay, what now? Like, what am I supposed to be doing with this? So that's where contextualized instruction comes into place. So in order to start creating IET lesson plans, you really need to understand the concept of contextualized instruction. Contextualized instruction is defined as a diverse family of instructional strategies that's designed to more seamlessly link the learning of foundational skills and academic or occupational content. Now, you may be used to the traditional methods of teaching, and I wanted to put this slide up to take a moment to do a little comparison of the traditional ways of teaching versus the contextualized ways of teaching. So if you look on the traditional side, we usually give a lesson, you have your reading block, your writing block, your math block, your science block. Those subjects are taught in isolation, okay? With contextualized instruction, the lessons are pretty cohesive. It's a lot of real world applications. It links to what they're learning to occupational content. They're not just learning skills just to learn them, and they can't apply them to the real world. In the traditional instruction, the assignment is also targeted to a specific academic skill. You teach the lesson, you may give them a sheet and solve all these multiplication problems, okay? In contextualized instruction, you wouldn't give it to a specific skill. You would give it to a content, something they need to apply, where you can take those same multiplication table and apply them to maybe something in construction, or they're designing something. Contextualized instruction is engaging, effective, and students can retain that easier. I know I can. If I'm applying something or learning something to apply it to a goal that I have or a skill that I want to use in the future, I can more easily retain that if I am contextualizing it. The assessment in traditional is also targeted to a specific academic skill. In contextualized instruction, you can incorporate authentic work materials, activities, and help students make connections to their lessons or their career goals. So, in order to start your contextualized instruction, or in order to create those activities, it's important to use a guided template that can help create a contextualized curriculum. And this is just a screenshot of the guided template, and that's what we have here. So we have a lesson plan template that we created to help organize all the information into one place. In order to develop this template, though, you need to have a few pieces in mind beforehand. You need to know the instructional model. You should know already if your program is partially integrated or fully integrated, or whatever model is being used. And if you don't know the model of your program, please ask your admin or the people that are in charge of your IET program at your site. You also need to know what basic skills content are you using. Is this lesson for ESOL? Is it for GED students? Is it for any of your ABE students? You need to know which basic skill content you're looking at, which curriculum you need to look at. You also should know your workforce training content. Are we going to focus on phlebotomy? Are we focusing on entrepreneurship? You need to know which content you're looking at, and you need to know the workforce preparation activities. You should also know your program length. A lot of IET programs have a certain cohort group that they use, where the program could be 12 weeks, 15 weeks, 20 weeks, and so on. You should also have your single set of learning objectives ready. And if students are using any supplemental software to support your IET program, most of this information should already come from your program of study. This is already something you would already have if your team has done the program of study. So let's take a look at that lesson plan template. So where that green box is, a lot of this, like I said, should be coming from your program of study, your IET planning team. And this is just an example. You can see we have the district, the area of focus, we have medical assisting, and the program number. The program type will be adult ESOL with that program number. And then this model is partially integrated. Then under that, we now divide it into the single set of learning objectives and the competencies. So underneath that in the green box, we have our learning objectives. You will notice I have 2 learning objectives here. And the reason why is because when you're doing your programs of study, sometimes you may end up, depending on who's doing them, you might have sometimes 40 to 50 single set of learning objectives. And you may only have a program that's lasting 12 weeks. You can't have 45 weeks of learning objectives, like a week, this learning objective, week 1, week 2, another learning objective. You can't do that for 45 weeks because your program is only lasting 12 weeks. So the reason why I have two here is we really try to combine similar learning objectives for teachers and for students. So here we go. Underneath that, you have the week. So this would be an example of week 7. And we organize them by weeks because, when talking to instructors and just in talking to students, they like it aligned by weeks, the lesson plans by weeks. It works better for them. You have the workforce training content and objectives. And then you have the basic skill content and objectives to the right in that dark purple color. And you have the reading, the language, and the math. A lot of that should already come from like I said, your program of study. And then you have your workforce preparation activities on that lesson plan. And then you have resources and activities, and then the required assessments. And that makes up your complete IET lesson plan. Many times the program of study will already be completed for you. The expectation may be for you to begin to create a lesson plan. In your program of study, you will most likely have the anchor standards listed, okay? And if you look on this screen, the anchor standard would be the one in bold where it says R.2. But I believe it is also important to know the focus for instruction within the anchor standard when creating these activities. I use this as a guide when creating the activities and assessments. So I usually take out the curriculum frameworks as I'm creating the lesson plans. Although you already have them in your program of study, a lot of times it's just the anchor standard. It's not those supporting standards. So I usually have those pieces out as well as I'm creating this. So for example, if your content anchor standard is R2, which is analyze how individuals, events, and ideas develop and interact over the course of a text, and your single set of learning objective involves reading and making connections using technical text with appropriate hand washing techniques, you would need to know that technical text involves tasks, directions, procedures, sequencing. With the frameworks coupled with the single set of learning objectives and your partnership from your CTE instructor employer, you can create fun and engaging lesson plans. So to find the activities, I know I've said a lot, but to find the activities, because that's what we really want to know, like, how do I get these activities for teachers? So to find the activities that correlate with the single set of learning objectives, you will need to conduct some research. There are hundreds of resources available online that are already contextualized for you within particular industries. You can observe your CTE instructor's partners class. That is really important so you can observe the materials or items students are being exposed to within their course. This is also how you can ask for materials that can be utilized. In working with an employer, you can ask for pamphlets, reading materials, and other items that can be donated to engage students. Practice and participate in joint planning. This is one of the most important pieces. This will ensure full alignment of instruction between the adult education instructor and the CTE instructor, okay? And that's really important. I know that it's hard sometimes to find time to do that, but in working with your, the staff at your campus or your site, you really need to find time to collaborate with that CTE instructor. And the reason why I say this, for example, you don't want to be having students read about the 3 steps to the chain of infection in an IET phlebotomy course when your CT instructor is actually teaching students 6 steps. You see what I mean? If you're doing it on your own and you're not collaborating with that CT instructor, it's really not going to have that true partnership of IET. You would only know about the 6 steps of the chain of infection if you're actively participating in joint planning. I know this may take a lot of time to do, especially planning with your partner instructor, but once you get the ball rolling, I have to be honest, it really does become a lot easier. So within the next few slides, I'm going to share general activities you can contextualize for almost any industry, okay? So the first one we're going to look at is close reading, okay? You find an article or reading passage on the occupation. The last one I did was entrepreneurship using human relations skills. So with close reading, students will use close reading strategies to number 1, read, get the gist of the article. 2, reread, highlight, or underline unknown words. 3, Use context clues and phrases around the words to determine the meaning. I call this marking up the text. 4, identify the main idea and details. And 5, using text evidence to find answers to questions. If you've never heard of closed reading, there's tons of research, tons of templates online. The foundation of closed reading is really to help students understand the text. It's really done a lot for nonfiction texts. Since nonfiction texts are usually the hardest for students to comprehend, usually have them do closed reading. So closed reading can be 5 steps, it can be 3 steps, it can be 4 steps. I generally like to have it as 3 steps, 1, 2, 3. You can cut this out and you can give it to students. That way they can have it and they can use it every time they get to a difficult passage. So for me, I just have the first read to get the gist. You're not reading to understand, you're just reading to get the gist of the passage. Second read, reread the passage, number the paragraph, circle unknown words. You annotate, put a star by the main idea and underline supporting details. And then the third read is when you make inferences, connections, and use text evidence to answer those questions. That can be used in almost any IET program that requires RLA. You can take any passage and do a closed reading. You may know the activity Watch, Think, Write. This is a new one, but I added the pair. And if you've never heard of it, I absolutely love it. So I call this one Watch, Think, Write pair. And I did this activity for entrepreneurship as well. So for example, students will watch and listen to a video about market segmentation. They will think and reflect about what they have watched. At this time, there's no writing. They're thinking, they're reflecting. So students are not writing. They're thinking about how market segmentation relates to communication and marketing. Okay. Then they're going to pair up and discuss what they watched with a classmate. And then they'll write to answer a question generated by the instructor about the video. Okay, you can also summarize. They can also pose new questions, but students really enjoy this activity of watch, think, pair, and writing. And I really like it because a lot of times when you watch videos or when you watch little short snippets, you're just thinking, what activity can I do? And in IET, there's usually a lot of videos you're watching about things that are happening in each industry. So it's really good to add an activity like this and contextualized activity like this that students can go to. Another one that many of you may already know is called the Jigsaw Method. Okay, in the Jigsaw Method, each group can be assigned a specific section within an article. Groups are assigned, they can be assigned different strategies, and then groups become experts at the material and topic. Okay, so medical assisting, small group activity, how this can be used. Small groups will discuss adverse effects of the use of alcohol, tobacco, and both legal and illegal drugs on the human body. With that being said, you give each student an article. Maybe you take the article of alcohol, you take the article on tobacco, you take the article on the effects on the human body. Each group studies it, becomes an expert, and then they teach it to the class. And that's the Jigsaw Method. That can be done with any IET program. You can also do a gallery walk, similar to Jigsaw. Okay, an example of using a gallery walk, students prepare representations of their learning on first aid and post them around the room or otherwise display them. Students can either share out or move from station to station and write questions or comments, noting similarities and differences, and or reflect on what they might do differently if they were to repeat the process. I love a gallery walk where you're walking around, looking at different student displays, learning through students. That's one of my favorite contextualized activities. There's also debates. Students can participate in debates about which sector within a career is most vital and why. An example of a debate, students can participate in a debate about which health career is the most critical member of the healthcare team. You can do that, and that's a contextualized activity. I have who has. I had to dig in my bag for this one. I had to go back to my elementary years of teaching. But I have who has, students can identify the vocabulary, terminology based on definitions and pictures. And if you're not familiar with the I have who has game, usually what it is you have a certain number of cards and they each have a sort of match, whether it's a definition that matches a picture, or a word that matches a definition and so on, and you hand them out to the entire class, and then somebody reads, I have this, who has, like, they're basically trying to figure out who has their match, and then that person reads, and so on. So an example of an I have, who has game in the healthcare sector. And this game would be students will identify common medical instruments by explaining their functions and sterilization methods. So here's an example. I have a blood pressure cuff. Who has an instrument that is used for listening to the action of someone's heart or breathing? Give me the second. I'm sure a lot of you know that one. But I have a stethoscope. Who has an instrument for measuring and indicating temperature? Let me give it a second. I have a thermometer. Who has a process in which ozone, bleach, or hydrogen peroxide may be used? That's a hard one. I have chemical sterilization, and so on. And that's how you can use the I have, who has game for contextualized activities. You can do a public service announcement. That's another really good one. Here's an example of how to use the public service announcement. Students will conduct research to create a public service announcement about safety signs and symbols and the importance of them in medical settings. And students love that. You know, I love giving public service announcements myself for various topics, but that's a really cool way to incorporate those IET activities and lessons. And then there's Padlet. And if you're not familiar with Padlet, it's a really cool site where it's almost like sticky notes that are interactive, that are online, that you can pose a question and students can respond to that with a sticky note or add to somebody else's sticky note. So it's free, you just sign up, it's pretty cool. But you can do Padlet or you can do Flipgrid. Flipgrid is similar to Padlet, but Flipgrid will allow you to record videos as well. So those are both free sites that you can use. But how to use this in a IET setting where you're contextualizing those lessons. One could be, you know, what is an entrepreneur? Students can use the Padlet or Flipgrid to generate discussion on what an entrepreneur is. And then they can have students add to what they think an entrepreneur is or what makes a successful entrepreneur. And then with math, students can read and report on graphs, charts, and tables of various data information they may see. Here's another activity that you can use, which I love, okay, because I love Oreos, I love eating. I'm a total foodie on this side, so every time I do this activity, I'm always looking for my Oreo bag. But this is called the Oriole Method, if you're not familiar with it. The Oriole Method is used with opinion or persuasive writing. This strategy helps students remember how to write an opinion paragraph, okay? And you can do this with your contextualized instruction. They can give an opinion or viewpoint about something within the industry, okay? In a contextualized activity, students can write about how they feel about specified topics, such as the best way to advertise a product. They can do that in the Oriole Method. And how the Oriole Method is used is you state your opinion or your viewpoint, you state your reasons why, you provide an example or details, and then you restate your opinion or viewpoint again. What I love about the Oriole Method is you can actually double stuff your Oreo. And what I mean by that is instead of just having the O-R-E-O, you can have O-R-E-R-E, because you can double up the R-E and double stuff, meaning they're going to give multiple reasons and multiple examples before closing it with their opinion. Students love it because they're eating, because I usually pass out Oreos, and they're also learning. So this is a great tool you can use in contextualizing your instruction. You can also use software. A lot of programs may have purchased supplemental software that you can add to your lessons that can help you correlate your activities. You will have to reach out to your admin staff or to your program to determine the best options that are available, but there's software out there that can help supplement your IET contextualized activities. I also use a readability checker. When I'm online searching for articles that match, that match the industry, when I'm planning with that CTE instructor and we're looking at articles, for the most part, I can gauge the reading level. But there are some times I'm not really sure what the reading level of this passage is, and I don't want to go too high, and I definitely don't want to go too low. So I highly recommend that you use the readability checker. You can, Microsoft Word has one where you can copy and paste it right into there, and it'll tell you the reading level. There's flashing kit calculators all over the internet. They are free. They let you know how hard your passage is to read or understand. And that's really important when you're giving students articles. You don't want to give it to them too high because that can frustrate them, right? But you don't want to give it to them too low either. So it's really important to use a readability checker or a tool such as that when you are finding articles online. There's also, and if you're not familiar, Pbs Learning Media, totally free. Love this site. It offers a lot of videos for students to watch, and it can be filtered by subject and grade level. They have this one component called Career Connections. And in that Career Connections component, students can view a lot of different positions within several different industries. Videos are organized by grade levels, and they have a viewing guide, which I love. Like, you don't even have to create anything. There's a viewing guide that poses questions that students can use as they watch the video or as a reflection for after the video. You could probably do that. Watch, think, pair, share. Watch, think, pair, write. Watch, think, pair, write as you're doing this, if they offer that viewing guide. And this is totally free. All you have to do is sign up and create an account. The next one that you may or may not be familiar with is the Nycd-C-U-N-Y Career Kit project. The project is a comprehensive resource guide for teachers targeted to specific industry sectors. It includes text, vocabulary lessons, activities that are literacy-based. They're already done for you. You do not have to do them. You can redo them or grab from them and add your piece to it, but they're already done for you. It is designed for upper ESOL levels. Sometimes use statistics that are from New York City because it's New York City based, so you may have to adapt it. This is, again, free. All you have to do is create an account. Some of the sectors that are on here, remember, these activities are already created for you. They have healthcare, technology, community and social services, education and childcare, manufacturing, hospitality, recreation and the arts, food production, construction, retail, transportation, and warehousing. Again, free site. Another site is Suncoast Credit Union Small Business Essentials. It's a free online program that provides a lot of courses. The course I love is Small Business Essentials. It's really good on money management topics. This is also free. An account is not needed. You just, select the site and you have access to the materials. Now, in your lesson plan template, there's a column for assessments. We had the content objectives, and then we had the activities and resources. And then there's also a column for the assessment piece, okay? I usually put at least 8 to 10 assessments, and it can be informal or formal. I usually put 8 to 10 for the week, because remember, the lesson plan is done by week, and the assessments can be in the form of a rubric. It can be a quiz. It can be a problem set, problem students have to solve. It can be a writing rubric. It can be a role play rubric. It can be as simple as comprehension questions. They're reading, they have to go back, find text evidence to answer the question. I wanted to provide you a sample of what a role play rubric can look like. And it can be really simple. You can create your own, but this is one that I created. And I did this based on number of points. So when we are doing the role play rubric, I usually, I'll look at speech. Is it clear and is appropriate use of oral language used, including tone and volume? Preparation is organized. When you're role playing, you need to understand your role. You need to understand who you are playing. Participation. Is the student willing to participate in the group? Have they been participating and preparing for this role play? Creativity. Are they using any sort of prop? Are they using sort of costumes and so on? And then they get points out of that. So each of them are 5 points. Possible points are 20. And then you put in the right-hand column the number of points awarded to that. There are many rubrics out there that you can use. I wanted to provide you a sample one so you know that it's this simple. It doesn't have to be so complex. I've seen lots of rubrics that are super wordy, which you can use, but I like my rubrics simple and easy to understand. There's performance-based assessments, okay? Reading with partners, retelling stories, steps or scenarios. Again, role-playing, that's a big one. That's also performance-based. Giving descriptions. Telling a story or scenario by using a sequence of 3 or more pictures. Debating. I know we had debating as an activity, but debating can also be a type of assessment. Brainstorming. Completing incomplete stories. Games. And games can also be a resource as well. Games can be an assessment and a resource at the same time. There's portfolio assessments. There's, samples of students' work that you may have gathered, stories, completed forms, exercise sheets, descriptions, drawings, tapes of oral work. Students can tape themselves, role-playing. Teacher description of student accomplishments, formal test data, checklists, and rating sheets. There's one on here. It's not a portfolio assessment, but it's an easy one that you can do all the time. It's as simple as an exit ticket. And there are tons of exit tickets that you can do. And there's a lot online. You could even use that Padlet on that site, that Padlet, that sticky note. You can generate a question, really simple. And within that question, students can respond to it, and that can be their exit ticket. I've seen a lot of times where you could just print something really simple, but ask a question, and then students have to fill out the exit ticket. They can also use a notebook. If you have an interactive notebook in your classroom, student can write something they've learned for the day. They can answer a question. They can solve a problem. That can be an exit ticket. That's a really simple way of assessing. That's not something that requires a lot of work beforehand. That's something you can do really quickly to see if students understand the materials. So as you're creating these lesson plans, it's really important to have at least, 6 to 10 activities. Again, it's done by weeks. You don't want to just have one activity for the entire week. That won't suffice your lesson plan. The reason why I say 6 to 10 is so that you can have a lot of choices, and it allows the instructor to have a lot of choices versus just creating, okay, there's 5 days in a week. I'm only going to do 5 activities. That's it. I really try to strive for the higher number. I would even say I even do probably 9 to 10 activities just to make sure there's choices. Also for your assessments, there should also be at least, again, 8 to 10 assessments that you can choose from. You don't want to just have one assessment and that's just the end all be all. Students can show that they learned their work in a variety of ways. Also, what I think it's really important for this is that the activities are linked within the lesson plan. When I first started making the lesson plans, I realized I didn't link the activities. Like I didn't link the text. Like if I found a text, an article, if I found a graphic organizer somewhere, if I didn't link it. So then when I was trying to do the activities or working with other instructors, I didn't know where I got it from. And I was thinking, oh man, that was not good. So when you're filling out the template, go ahead and link it. So even if you're like handing this off to someone else or using it yourself, you can always go back to it. You're not like trying to search, as instructors, we always find like good stuff. We find stuff all the time. And we may bookmark it. But when creating the lessons, it's really important to have these linked to your lesson plan template so you're not playing the search game over and over again, because that's super frustrating. It's important to include variations on some activities if students need more support. There's some students who may need some enrichment, you know, those activities might be a little bit too simple for them. Make sure your activities or resources have a variety. There's some students that may need more support on a certain activity, and that activity may be too difficult for them. It may need some scaffolding. Make sure that there's variations that students can participate in the activity. And then always check in with your CT instructor and or employer for guidance. I can't say how important that is. If you are doing this independently, it's going to be really hard for you to have a true IET because you're not involving that occupational instructor. You might be exposing students to things they will not see in the CTE classroom. So it's really important to check in with your CT instructor and or employer for guidance. I know that it can be difficult to plan because of the time, but you know, your admin staff or whoever is at your site, hopefully they can create time for you guys to get together and plan and talk about things. Always, and not always, but it's also important to observe the course, you know. You might be surprised at what students are exposed to when they're in their occupational or CTE classroom. It's really important and beneficial to, if you have time, just observe the class, see what materials are seeing, see what they're going to be doing. That way, when they're back in your AGE classroom, you know what materials to expose them to. And then this is the end of the presentation. So any questions? And I see the question, can you get a copy of this PowerPoint? You can get a copy of this PowerPoint, and I know June will come back on and answer this question, but you can get a copy of this PowerPoint by creating a IPDA account. You probably already have it. The PowerPoint will be in there along with the workbook. So all the activities you see here, the lesson plan template, all the contextualized activities that I listed, everything there will be in your IPDA portal, and you should be able to access it.
Thank you, Vanessa. Yes, all the PowerPoint and the activity book is already on the IPDA website. So you have a feedback slide that is now on your screen. If you could take a minute to answer these 3 short questions, we always love to hear your feedback. And while you're doing that, I'll remind you of series 2 now of this 3-part series that will occur on October 5th. And it will be leveraging the multi-dimensional reality of the adult education classroom. So I think you'll really enjoy tuning in again next week. Until then, I wish all of you a safe rest of the week, and we'll see you next week.